Hello and welcome to I Am with Eric Faria. I am your host, and today it is my pleasure to have here with me in the studio Corey Anker, who is a life and leadership coach, as well as the founder of the Uncovery Project. Hi, Corey.
Hi, Eric.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. So I wanted to start just by asking you to tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to be a life and leadership coach, as well as the founder of the Uncovery Project.
Well, it's thanks for asking. It's as many stories are. It's a long story, but the short version of it is, I was a precocious kid. I was the kid who, oftentimes when I would be, eating dinner over a friend's house, would be playing with my friend, and then I would find my way into the kitchen, and I would end up in conversation with the adults.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I found myself in varying positions, a lot of time spent in college socializing around the keg, whatever, and just being in conversation, right? Constantly being in conversation, and inevitably people would say something in conversation and be like, I don't know why I'm telling you this. People always wanted to unburden themselves to me, which isn't coaching, but
Sure, but they trusted you.
Yeah, and in college, at that time I didn't really know what coaching was. But as I got older, people in my circles started to kind of nudge me. They would say, like, you got to do something with this. And I didn't know really what this was, but they were asking for feedback. It was really more like advice than coaching.
Right.
And there's obviously, they're very different things.
Right, yeah, of course.
But I had another career at the time, and I was on the phone complaining to a friend because it had kind of gone sideways. And he said, great, so now go and I actually, I put up a shingle, just sort of, it wasn't quite a dare, but it was sort of like, okay, fine, let's just.
Yeah.
And I actually started to build a practice. And then ultimately I went into a very rigorous training program because prior to training, the analogy would be that I was like a short order cook. I could create food that was tasty enough that people would come back and nutritious enough.
Yep.
But I didn't have the knife skills. I didn't have the, the pairings. So I took on some training, and the rest, as they say, is history.
But did you have a coach before you went through the program?
I had worked, it's interesting, I haven't thought of him in a while, but I actually did have a coach, and we just worked together out of, the book, The Artist's Way?
Yeah.
So we just did some exercises out of that, and that was probably my very first experience with a coach. But it was short-lived, and it was just working around like one project. And then, so that was pretty much my experience prior to really getting more immersed into the profession.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about the Uncovery Project.
Well, the Uncovery Project is essentially a space that I'm always intentionally creating. You could think of it at the crossroads of coaching, leadership, and recovery. And the simple principle is that authenticity equals power. My assertion is that the more in touch with one's needs and wants and truth and et cetera, that is where power comes from.
Right.
And I'm not talking about power at a pulpit, I'm not talking about power with a sword or a weapon. I'm talking about the ability to impact one's life, relationships, choices, outcomes, like that.
So we were talking earlier about authenticity and, we live in the social media age. And it's very common to see versions of what people would consider authentic. It's almost like, Instagram has different filters that you can choose, pick and choose from.
Yeah.
And you see on social media, different versions that people want to put out into the world. So could you talk a little bit about the relationship between social media and authenticity, or lack thereof?
Sure. Well, I would say it's pretty much common knowledge, or the way most people would hold it as, going onto social media, there's varying degrees of authenticity. Some people just say it like it is.
Yep. Use it as a personal diary.
Some people get a little too real, so to speak, right?
Sure.
Which then fosters posts like 7 things not to do on social media with your relationship or something. But I do think there are varying degrees of photoshopping the truth, right? So now why is this? I think it's because people are protecting from something, right? We're afraid of something. We're afraid of judgment. We're afraid of some variation of that, right? And it happens, again, to varying degrees with people. But I think the irony is when we are in the presence of authenticity, we tend to be drawn to it.
Yeah, it's
We
true.
love to see the heroes and the champions who come out and share the news, who share themselves.
Yeah.
But when it's about us, right, it's like, do we really want to?
Sure.
And so to your point and to your question, I think that social media is a place where people have taken on controlling how they want to be perceived.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to just being their authentic self.
So how could we start the process of actually taking away these masks, right, and becoming more authentic in a way that feels natural and not forced?
Well, I think first somebody needs to be aware that they're doing that, or that they're doing it and it may not actually serve them. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with, showing your highlight reel.
Sure. Yeah.
As opposed to the behind the scenes footage, if that's what you want to do.
Course.
But is it creating a cost for you? I think oftentimes there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
People want connection. They're holding out what they think is like the attractive bait, for lack of a better word, right? To attract, but ultimately, because it's so polished, it's almost inaccessible, or it's not real, or you don't actually get the deeper connection. So it's like a setup to not have it go the way one actually wants.
Yeah, and I was just, as you were talking, I was just thinking about that. It's the fakeness that it's actually, well, to me at least, it's a turnoff. Because if I see that somebody's trying so hard to be something that they're not, or do something that it's not related to who they actually are in real life, I'm like, I don't want to watch this. I don't want to listen to this. I don't want to read this, because it's not the real person. It's just an image they're trying to project.
It's hard to relate to.
Yeah, because it's not even human sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it starts with awareness.
Yeah.
And then I think it's just practicing. Go 5% further with the people that are close to you.
Sure.
Which could be safe places to land, so to speak. Sometimes maybe we feel the stakes are higher with those closest to us, but wherever it is that somebody feels they can practice, their friend, their team, their wherever, and just practice being authentic. And really, authenticity is just really being connected to what's there. It's not trying to do or be something outside of yourself. It's just what's there.
Yeah, that's a major point, because for me, like you, I was a very, observant child. I was always aware of what was going on around me. And I would see like people performing on a day-to-day basis. And I was like, why do they do that, right? And then you pick up on social cues and like culture and whatever you have around you, right? Religion also plays a huge role for people who are very religious. And you know how to act in a certain way around a certain group of people.
Sure.
You know what is permitted, what is allowed, and what is not.
I think it's also about having needs met.
Yeah.
I think human beings are social creatures, and we are wired for connection.
Of course.
And so we will do what we feel, is needed to foster that.
Yeah.
Again, authenticity tends to lead to connection, but because of fear, I think we put up the shiny surface.
Yeah.
And again, to varying degrees.
Right.
But I believe that wherever no matter how deep you are in that pool, so to speak, whether you're completely altering yourself or you're just shading it slightly, if you can move to a shallower place in the pool, I believe it will lead to greater satisfaction.
Of course. How do you practice authenticity in your life?
It's a good question.
Thank
the
you.
easiest place is with my children. It's just, I'm completely disarmed.
Yeah.
There's no judgment unless they're joking around.
Right.
And then they judge, because they like to be that way. It's just a safe space. So it's disarming, and they just, being around them like gets me right in the core. I'm probably, it takes a little more intention, but with my wife, I really just, again, disarmed, someone I really trust. My friends, with my clients, I get to practice it on purpose.
Okay.
Because really, when I'm working with someone, it's about their needs.
Yeah, not yours.
But oftentimes, clients find themselves in an experience of being alone in what they're sharing. So to normalize it and have them realize that it's just humanity and we all have that,
right.
I might share something vulnerable, authentic, my experience that has them in a more of a Me Too connected.
Sure.
So I get to practice there too.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So
it's very powerful, actually. When a coach can be vulnerable and authentic with a client, it creates an incredible space and connection.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see that. I remember even when I began, we went through the same coach training program, and when I began doing the work with clients, I just felt like I had to be a certain way. Like, I am coach, so I have to be stiff, and I have to be in control, and I have to be like, and no, it's not about that at all. It's about being vulnerable and being connected to the other person. So it's like going, I don't know, I like swimming. So like going for a swimming competition or something, when you're like, it's not really a competition, you're more like just doing it for fun, I guess. Terrible analogy, but anyway. But yeah, so wow, that's really powerful. So how did you think that you actually consciously created this project? How did the idea come about?
I just I just experienced a need for it. Unfortunately, we're seeing inauthenticity, and it's obviously more complex than just one word. I'm just going to call it inauthenticity. Obviously, there's other things, but it plays out in some really unfortunate ways, in particular in schools. You see a lot of, things passed on to kids, and it leads to bullying. We've seen a lot of really tragic events lately in the news in schools. And I think in particular, people in general, but kids have a lot of pressure. And they're looking to fit in. Connection's really, really important. And their needs aren't being met. And there's a lot of pressure. My kids are younger, so I don't have the direct experience, but I speak to a lot of parents. And getting into like the early teen years, and cliques and friend groups, and
I remember those.
Response time. But correct me if I'm wrong. We didn't have the technology.
No.
Right.
So I was in high school in the early 2000s. So
the amount of eyes that are on kids. And so response time for texts or calls or invitations to places.
I'm so thankful I did not have that. Yes.
It's a really big deal for them.
I can only imagine. Yes.
And if we're not careful, it's easy to get caught up in adult problems and not pay that attention. But for, a young, impressionable person, it carries a lot of weight for them.
Right. Wow.
So.
Yeah. No, I'm just getting, I guess I'm just thinking about the impact because, like I said, I was a teenager in the early 2000s. So even though we had technology, it was a little bit different. But I definitely want to continue this topic. It's an illuminating conversation. So for everybody watching, we will be back right after this break. Stick with us. And welcome back to I Am with Eric Faria. And we're here today with Corey Anker. I'm just going to jump right in. And Corey, we were talking about the intersection of like coaching, parenting, and leadership, right? And so your project speaks to that. And can you talk a little bit about it for us? Yeah,
so I'm putting together a project with a colleague of mine. She's an incredible coach, named Laura Klein-Taylor. And we are both parents and coaches. We went also through the same training program. And we created, the project's called Elevate Parenting. And it's a coaching conversation to raise your bar while you raise your kids. So
amazing.
So she's about to go on maternity leave. which is exciting because her family's expanding. She's having her second. I have 3, and she's having a second. Yeah. And in a couple months, we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. Right now, we are putting together a group where we're going to be working with 8 individuals who are parents and are looking to foster leadership. I use the word leadership. Some people might say independence.
Right.
But the principle is, as a parent, and this is for all the parents out there, we want our kids to be self-sufficient. We want them to be leaders in the world.
Right.
Because if Mother Nature takes its course the way we hope, hopefully far in the future, but at some point, our kids will be here, but we won't.
Right.
So how do you set your child up for success? And we're coming at it from a leadership angle.
Right.
Teaching them to be self-sufficient, to have a voice, to be okay and authentic, right? To make a mess, to all that. And in our experience, what typically happens is that parents either have an experience of falling short somewhere, or if they're super parent, where they fall short is over here.
Right.
So you end up in a dynamic where one realm kind of works and one doesn't.
Yeah.
And we are creating the opportunity to come at life where you can show up powerfully everywhere.
Yeah.
Where you can model leadership for your children.
Sure.
And have them see a working life, a working relationship, working where money's working and time is working and energy is working. All the common, right? All the low-hanging fruit that people say, like, if only I had.
More time, more money, yes.
And so it's important because the parent ends up creating value for themselves, but they're also holding a space for their children and calling them forth to be reliant and strong.
Yeah. And like, how old would the kids in the program be?
Well, the program is for the parents.
Yeah.
Okay. And, you could even be an expecting parent.
Right.
But certainly young children, but I mean, all the way up to college age. If you are engaging with your children on a regular basis and you're devoting your resources to them, it's an opportunity to take what might be a limited mindset and expanding that into possibility.
Right, right.
And,
Because I was just thinking about the kids. I did a program like 11, 12 years ago where they actually started with kids age 8. So it was a very powerful thing to see, an 8, 9, 10-year-old come out of that. Yeah. It was a weekend, but come out of that weekend and be like seeing the world through a different perspective. And I think, the parents had gone through the program themselves for the kid to be able to do it. So they were like speaking the same language once they came out, and it was powerful.
I love that. Kids respond. They respond to coaching. I show up as a father, not a coach, but parents do put coaching in, and coaches sometimes resemble parenting.
Yeah.
I remember when my daughter was young. Now we moved to Long Island, but I used to live in Manhattan. Yeah. And my daughter, we would take the bus every morning, a public bus, up to drop her at school. And on the way home one day, there was one of her classmates. We were riding with the parent and the classmate, and she was like really, the friend was very frustrated and very upset. And my daughter, she's 8 now, she must have been probably 4 or 5 at the time. Yep. She said, she turned to her friend, she said, you could choose to be happy.
I love that.
And it was like, obviously a very proud moment for me, but because we had that conversation.
Of course.
Where things are going to happen and you can't control the things, but you can control
how you feel
about the things, or what do you? So it was a pretty. I'm all for kids and coaching.
The daughter of a coach.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that idea too. So right now we're creating a space for the parents, and then they can go. But that's a good idea.
Yeah, no, I mean,
a good idea.
I love the thing that you're doing, and I was just mentioning something that I remember going through. Not as a child, I actually went through the same program as a teenager, but I remember that they had it for kids as well, as young as 8.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, no, it's great because it models, like you said, leadership. It models, things that we use in real life, such as time, money, right?
And a lot of the work, to me, they're just kind of fundamental English words like responsibility and ownership, but they're held in a very intentional way.
Yes.
So that those things are on purpose, as opposed to just, when you use that word colloquially, there's kind of there's maybe a value judgment that gets put on it, right? Like responsibility's a good thing, or like, but this is just sort of, it's slightly different, right? It's more intentional, but it's the same. It's really the same concept. So.
Yeah, that's good. So is it going to be starting?
It's going to be starting at the end of summer, timed perfectly with the new start of the new school year.
Yeah.
Which can be a very stressful time for parents, where a lot of anxiety happens, and I know that's your theme this season.
Yeah, about anxiety, stress reduction. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I think, part of leadership is learning how to take on more. Yeah. I've heard it said it's not about always lightening the load so much as strengthening the back. And I think leadership gives an opportunity to strengthen the back. Because if you think of the leaders of the world, and they don't have to be the president necessarily,
right.
But it could be anyone, a leader in a school, a leader on a sports team, they have a way of taking on. They can hold, right?
Yeah,
they can be responsible for their teammates.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great. So I love where this conversation is going. So we're going to take a little break.
Great.
But for everybody watching, we'll be back right after this. Hello and welcome back to I Am. I have once again Corey Anker here with me. So Corey, we touched on this subject lightly in the previous segment, and I wanted to actually know your input about this. What do you do in your personal life in terms of managing your stress and or your anxiety?
Personally, I find fitness a really nice kind of outlet. Lately, after a lot of prodding from people who've been into it, I started to take on hot yoga. And it's true what they say, it can be habit forming. At least it's a healthy habit.
Yes.
I think that it provides like a 1-to-1 ratio of output to input. So you're actually, for the effort that you put out, you're immediately breaking a sweat, immediately getting endorphins, there's a benefit. So I love that. I think anytime you can just actually sit still, really just, and that could be, find some water. If you're in an urban environment, find a fountain. Find something that kind of throws off energy that's soothing.
Yeah.
I think we move so fast. We don't even notice how fast we're going. It's like staring out of a moving car window. You don't see every blade of grass that goes by. You're just like, oh, the landscape. And I think life. It's just, oh, life.
Yeah.
And it goes fast. So those are two things. And I think being, we were talking about authenticity. I think being authentic actually can reduce stress because you're cultivating a relationship of comfort with just what is.
Yeah.
So once you're able to just be with the truth, so to speak, you don't have to spend a lot of time and effort and resources into manufacturing the thing that hides it.
Right.
And that's controlling and managing that, right? And people's feelings and reactions and it's exhausting.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's giving me like
stressful.
A flashback.
It's stressful.
Yeah, it is stressful.
So once you kind of can like put that down and be you, it's a lot easier.
It is. It is a lot easier.
So those are things that I keep an eye on and work with my clients on.
You're just, like I said, I'm going back in time here. I just remembered because when I was actually not out to my family, like as a gay man, it was so stressful. And it was so consuming. And it was just like one of those things where, okay, I have to watch the things that I say. I have to watch what I do. I cannot talk about X or Y topic with X or Y person. And it's like...
managing pronouns.
God,
managing,
it was so crazy. But authenticity. Why did I never think about that? I mean, I think I did because I came out eventually. But I don't think consciously I stopped to think about the toll that it took for the time that I wasn't out. But anyway, going back to what we were talking about, so you were talking about yoga, you were talking about fitness, you were talking about staying still, which I love. The water I love as well. We're here in Mamaroneck, and I used to live not very far from here in Rye, so there's like the water there directly across from Long Island.
Yes, true. Also, I think creating structure helps.
Creating structure.
Because whatever that looks like, but if there's a lot rattling around in your mind and you're kind of driving around and you got to get to places and keep track of things, sometimes just getting it out, making a list.
Sure.
An empowered one, a specific, not just like, but one that you intend to come back to.
Yeah.
I think one of the easiest actions that I'll create with clients is first make a list without thinking about the priority order. Just get out everything you possibly can think of that you need to be responsible for, and then go back and number them, and then just take them a few at a time. And, the more I think we cross off our to-do lists as opposed to what goes on.
Yes.
I think that has a great way of bringing stress down. I know when my to-do list grows and I have an experience that I can't get to them, that stress can grow.
I know. When I have like a huge list, I already start to feel anxious. That's why, I remember it was actually during the coach training program, doing like a top 5. I began actually with a top 3. Because I was like, I can only do 3.
Yeah.
Even 5 for me at that point was too much. So nowadays, like I've gotten into the habit of it. So it's good, creating structure.
Yeah.
So why do you think that people are actually so afraid of creating structure in their lives? That got me thinking now.
I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that they mistake it as a cage. So I have to, and people don't want to be in have to. A lot of people are present to what change will provide for them, and they're up for it.
Right.
But there's resistance that gets...
So you have to be willing.
Yeah, you have to be willing, and I think actually when people who have empowered structure, most of the time they tend to say that it's actually very freeing, because if you just have open space. I mean, think about an open day. If you had nothing scheduled, if you're like me, you're probably not going to get that much done.
No, I don't either.
It's fine to take a day on purpose to relax, but I'm saying, if you want to be productive, but like it's open, it feels great for about 5-10 minutes, an hour, and then you don't really get anything done. And inevitably at the end of the day, you have the feeling of, I wasted it, I didn't, So having something set up, allows you to actually be productive and you don't have to put the work into finding the thing. It's already set up.
Right.
Yeah,
of course. And
so that tends to reduce stress and anxiety. But to your question, I think people relate to it as trapped. Yeah. And they don't want it.
Yeah, of course.
And who wants to feel trapped? Nobody wants to feel trapped.
No, nobody does.
It's just finding the right structure. And I think the right gradient too.
Yeah.
Start a little bit.
Like what I did a top 3 instead of a top 5 because I thought it was too much. So like 2 or 3, I can definitely tackle during the day.
Yeah.
But
can't clean your house in one day, but does that mean you shouldn't even go through one drawer? Like then you won't have a clean house. Take it in pieces.
Sounds very good. Yeah. So, I mean, this conversation is fascinating. So I definitely want to come back to it.
Okay.
And so we're gonna do a new episode with Corey. So for you watching at home or on YouTube, if it's not already out, it's going to be out next week. So stick with us through the next episode, and I have a lot more with Corey Anker coming up. Thank you for watching.